I don't know what it looks like, what it feels like, what it is, what I know. When I get there, when I find it, it's for me. I don't know what it looks like.
Welcome to Black Girl Magic Stories presents U.S. Women Pioneers, where we celebrate the remarkable women who have paved the way for future generations while making a unique mark in time. We celebrate the incredible women who have exemplified perseverance and leadership by pushing boundaries and breaking barriers. We honor the amazing Black women who see no box. This Women's History Month and every day, we give reverence to the phenomenal Black women who continue to surmount hurdles many call impossible. We love you, Black women. You are amazing. Our first pioneer on today's list inspires us to follow our dreams. Elizabeth Bessie Coleman was an American aviation pioneer and the first African American plus Native American woman to hold a pilot's license. Born in 1892, she was determined to pursue her dreams of becoming a pilot, despite the racism and sexism of that time. She moved to France in 1920 and earned her international pilot's license from the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale. After returning to the United States, she became a celebrated public figure, performing daring stunts at air shows across the country. Coleman also used her fame to advocate for civil rights and inspire other African Americans to pursue their dreams. Her legacy lives on today as an example of courage and determination in the face of adversity.
Our next pioneer works to break the chains of silence and violence. Tarana Burke is an American social activist and community organizer. She is best known as the founder of the Me Too movement, a grassroots campaign to support survivors of sexual violence. Burke has dedicated her life to advocating for marginalized communities, particularly women of color. Burke has received numerous awards and honors for her work, including the 2017 Time Magazine Person of the Year Award, was listed one of Time Magazine's 100 Most Influential People of 2018, and the 2019 Sydney Peace Prize. Burke continues to be an outspoken advocate for survivors of sexual violence and works tirelessly to create a world where all people are safe and respected.
Our next pioneer is a Nobel Prize-winning author and one of the most influential writers of her time. Toni Morrison has written 11 novels, including Beloved, which won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1988. Her works explore themes of race, identity, and family. In 1993, she became the first African-American woman to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. Morrison was also awarded the National Book Critics Circle Award for Fiction and the U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom. She was the Robert F. Gowen Chair in the Humanities at Princeton University from 1989 to 2006 and served as the first Black female editor in Random House in the 1960s. Her books have been translated into numerous languages and adapted into plays, operas, and films. Morrison's legacy continues to inspire readers around the world. She has been praised for her unique style of writing that combines elements of realism with magical realism. Her work has been celebrated for its exploration of difficult topics such as racism, sexism, and oppression. She is also a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha and one of my sorors.
Our next trailblazer coined the phrase, "I am sick and tired of being sick and tired." Fannie Lou Hamer was a civil rights leader and voting rights activist who dedicated her life to fighting for the rights of African Americans. Born in 1917, she grew up in rural Mississippi and worked as a sharecropper before becoming an active member of the civil rights movement. While she was undergoing surgery to remove a uterine tumor, a white doctor forcibly sterilized Hamer by giving her a hysterectomy without her consent. In 1964, she co-founded the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, which sought to challenge the all-white delegation from Mississippi at the 1964 Democratic National Convention. Her powerful testimony about the injustices faced by African Americans in Mississippi helps galvanize support for the civil rights movement. She also organized voter registration drives and other efforts to secure voting rights for African Americans. Throughout her life, Hammer was an outspoken advocate for racial justice and economic equality, and her legacy continues to inspire people around the world today.
Our next pioneer is literally used as a blueprint for many medical marvels. Henrietta Lacks was an African-American woman whose cells, taken without her knowledge or consent in 1951, became one of the most important tools in medical research. Her cells, known as the HeLa cell line, were essential in developing the polio vaccine, cloning, gene mapping, and in vitro fertilization. She was born in Roanoke, Virginia in 1920 and died of cervical cancer at the age of 31. Despite her death, her cells have been kept alive and used for research ever since. Her story has become a symbol of medical ethics and racial injustice. Henrietta's legacy continues to live on through her cells and the impact they have on modern medicine.
Zora Neale Hurston was a renowned author, anthropologist, and civil rights activist. She is best known for her novel, Their Eyes Were Watching God, which has become an American classic. Hurston was born in 1891 in Alabama and raised in Edenville, Florida. She attended Howard University and Barnard College, where she became the first African-American woman to earn a bachelor's degree. Hurston was a prolific writer who published 4 novels, 2 books of folklore, an autobiography, plus numerous short stories and essays. Her work focused on the lives of African Americans living in the South during the early 20th century. She also conducted extensive research into African American culture and folklore. Hurston was an outspoken advocate for civil rights and women's rights throughout her life. In addition to her writing career, she enjoyed conducting anthropological research. Hurston died in 1960, but her legacy continues to inspire readers around the world. She was also a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated.
Our next trailblazer has been inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame and continues to be a powerful voice in the fight for gender equality. Faye Wallerton was born on July 8, 1943. She is an American feminist and social activist. She was the first African American and youngest president of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America from 1978 to 1992. During her tenure, she increased access to reproductive health services for women and advocated for abortion rights. She also served as a board member of the National Organization for Women and the National Abortion Rights Action League.
The next pioneer on our list, Patricia Roberts Harris, was a trailblazer in the fields of law, politics, and education. She was the first African-American woman to serve as a U.S. ambassador, the first African-American woman to serve in a presidential cabinet, and the first African-American woman appointed as the dean of a prestigious law school. Harris graduated from Howard University with honors and went on to earn her law degree from George Washington University Law School. She served as an assistant attorney general for the District of Columbia before becoming the first African-American woman U.S. ambassador when she was appointed to foster the diplomatic relations with Luxembourg by former President Lyndon B. Johnson. In 1977, Harris became the first African-American woman to serve in a presidential cabinet when she was appointed the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development by former President Carter. She then served as the Secretary of Health and Human Services, also during former President Carter's time in office. In addition to her political career, Harris was also an educator. She served as the Dean of Howard University School of Law in 1969 and later taught at George Washington University Law School until her death in 1985. She was also a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Our final pioneer, whose work will guide our discussion today, is Dr. Hadia Nicole Green. a trailblazer in the fields of medicine and science. She is just the second African American woman to receive a PhD in physics from the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and the first person to develop a cancer treatment using laser technology. Her groundbreaking research has been featured in numerous publications, including the New York Times and Forbes. In addition to her academic accomplishments, Dr. Green has received numerous awards for her work, including Research Advocate of the Year Award from Southern Company in 2016, Professional Achievement in Industry Award, Women of Color in STEM from the Career Communications Group, Inc. in 2018, and included in the top 30 under 40 in healthcare, named by Business Insider in 2019. Dr. Green is committed to making science accessible to everyone, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds. In loving memory of her aunt, Dr. Green established the Ora Lee Smith Cancer Research Foundation to provide financial support for cancer research and education initiatives. And she regularly speaks at events around the world about her work and its impact on society. Her passion for science has inspired countless people around the world, and she continues to be an inspiration as she works towards finding new treatments for cancer and other diseases. Today's pioneers show us a need for autonomy and inspire us to be personal advocates in every aspect of our lives. Let's talk about living our dreams, autonomy over our bodies and health, plus gender roles. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Dr. Roselyn Black and Miss Juliette Williams. How do you all feel about your autonomy, right? To make decisions about your own health and wellness, and the autonomy of sisters, your sisters, living here in the US, to make their own decisions about their own health and wellness, especially in a place where they're under attack.
If I could be honest, I think it's deplorable. And the reason being is because people have abortions for all kinds of reasons. And whether I'm against it or not, who am I to tell someone that they can't do something with their body? Why? That shouldn't be anybody's choice but my own choice. I just remember the morning that the verdict came out that the Supreme Court changed, our rights. And there were so many women on social media who were saying, I had an abortion because my child, it was either going to be me or my child. My child was going to kill me because the pregnancy wasn't going as planned. Yeah. And I think when you're under circumstances such as that, I just don't think that anyone should be able to dictate what you do with your body. It's already a hard enough choice to terminate a pregnancy, and I can't even imagine the mothers who had to make that decision. I just think it's deplorable. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to agree with that, because today, I really think this decision is all political. It has nothing to do with what people should or should not do.
Yeah.
Because even those people who voted for it, they're still having abortions. People are still going to have abortions regardless. And wealthy people will get them. Yeah. It's the people who are not as financially in that category that can pay for it, that has to go across the county line to go behind the, in the back streets to have it done. It's still going to happen. It's not going to change anything.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for me, one of the things that is so important to me is the freedom to be able to choose, the freedom to have a choice, right? With all things, especially living in a country where I recognize that like racism, sexism, all of those systems that operate around me, oftentimes don't give me full transparency into making a choice, right? And so the freedom to be able to choose.
It's the freedom to be able to choose, but it's all, in my opinion, it's a setup. Because it's to destroy the black family. The more children you have and you can't take care of, it keeps you in this turmoil. And to me, that's the whole thing. Because white people are going to get abortions regardless. We're the ones that are going to have to struggle. And that's the purpose of the whole thing, to destroy the family unit. And to me, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, and even when we thinking about it, you know, like the 1960s, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago, right? You know, the forced sterilization of Fannie Lou Hamer, that was commonplace 60 years ago.
That's right.
Right? And so, based on what you all just said, I'll ask, like, do you still feel as though the Black and brown body is under attack?
It is, because people don't even realize it. Today, when a woman goes in to have a delivery, the first thing the doctor wants to do is do a C-section. That's the very first thing, not even a discussion. And that's the last thing you want, because you're supposed to have a vaginal birth. It's more traumatic, the C-section, but they don't even give them in Baltimore City, they don't give them the option pretty much. It's just automatically a C-section.
Yeah.
And even speaking in that, when we talk about maternal health, I mean, Black and brown mothers suffer the most. I mean, let's be really honest. Had Serena and Beyonce not talked about their struggles with their maternal health, I mean, they're superstars. And some of the things were overlooked. But what does that say for us, common people who don't have their access to wealth, who doesn't have the access to the greatest doctors? What does that say for us? And when you think about it, I always encourage people that you have to be an advocate for your own health. You know when something's not right in your body, and you have to say, no, this is not right. I know something is going on, because we are dismissed, unfortunately, when it comes to healthcare. And the reality is because we get stereotyped. If you are a certain weight, then you're supposed to have high blood pressure, you're supposed to be diabetic, you're supposed to have all these things. Well, that may not necessarily be true of everyone. And if you are not an advocate for yourself, prime example, I had a medical incident in 2020 right before the pandemic hit. And I was at the hospital alone. They kept me overnight, and I had to do an MRI the next morning. And so I say to the doctor, could you hold 1 second? I want to call my husband, because I want him to hear as well what you're telling me. Because right now I'm terrified. I've had this medical situation, and what you're saying to me is not, this is what I'm thinking to myself, what you're going to say to me is not going to register. This man tells me, he says, well, you don't need to worry about that right now. You just need to hear what I'm going to say, and you can worry about that all later. And I say, excuse me, sir. I have a right to hear what it is that you're telling me. I have a right to call anybody in my family, because at the end of the day, I know they're going to want to know what's going on. And I don't know if I can repeat what it is that you're going to tell me, because I'm anxious, right? And I'm terrified because of what you just told me has happened to me. And so I don't know if I can that does not work for me. And he literally was not trying to let me call my husband. And I said, wait 1 second. I said, well, if you feel that way, I can record this conversation, and I don't need your permission to record this conversation, because I need to know my medical history, what it is that you're telling me.
Right.
And so, I mean, I don't care if you walk in, and then sadly, I finally had to say, sir, I'm a doctor too. You may just see this Black woman laying in this hospital bed who you have this idea, this stereotype about. I may not be a medical doctor, but I'm a doctor too. I'm not some just uneducated person who's not gonna understand what it is you're telling me. But if I'm having that issue as someone who is educated, what if there is someone who isn't as educated, who's not an advocate for themselves, and they experience something like that? And it happens all the time. And when people are having a medical situation, they're not going to remember everything the doctor says.
That's very true.
Very true.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that they're incompetent. It doesn't mean that they don't care about what it is that you're telling them, that it's going in one ear and not the other. It's that they're terrified, one. You just told them something that's very life-altering and life-changing, and it's insensitive to think that they're just supposed to know what to do in that process. That's a lot of information, and it's overwhelming. And I think if you don't have an advocate with you, it poses problems.
Yeah. You bring up a lot of good points about advocacy, right? Being able to advocate for ourselves, being able to bring family into spaces with us where we may feel as though we're not present 100% to advocate for us in addition to, yes, our own selves. So one of the things that you brought up, right, which was interesting because I'm listening to you share kind of that dialogue between you and the doctor at that time, right? And it doesn't appear as though he was really doing those things that he could have done a little bit better to kind of build trust, right? To be there with you in that moment and have you trust, the space, trust him or her, and trust the advice or the next steps that he may have been, proposing to you. And so based on what your health situation was. So what are some of the things that we could do, right, to kind of build trust with our doctors and medical professionals, even when we may feel as though they don't have our best interest in mind, right?
That's a great question. And you got to hold them accountable in the moment. Yeah. In the moment. So oftentimes, sometimes as Black women, we don't want to make waves because we don't want to be seen as an angry Black female. So we don't want to make waves and we don't hold people accountable. But you're paying them. You're paying them for a service. So you have every right to ask any question you desire. You have any right to ask any question that does not feel good to you. Trust your intuition. If you feel like it's not something that's going to be beneficial for you, ask the question why. Why do I need to do this? Why are you recommending this? Why are you suggesting this? You have the right to ask those things. And I think sometimes we don't recognize that we have patients' rights. We don't recognize that because we're already, again, in a situation where we may feel helpless or hopeless because we don't know what's going on with us. And if you have a team working with you and they're not paying attention to what it is you're saying, then that's problematic. Like I'm dealing with a bone, I know you guys are like, she's got a lot of afflictions, but I'm dealing with a bone infection right now. And when I was in the hospital, I had the nurses, they will tell you what medication that they're giving you. And so she called out a medication. I said, nope. I shouldn't be taking that. I don't know why that. She's like, the doctor didn't have a conversation with you? I said, he sure didn't. Because had he had a conversation, I would have told him I'm allergic to that medication. And I was like, and I'm gonna have a very different symptom going on than what I'm dealing with right now.
Yeah.
And so thank God for a nurse who was an advocate for me.
Right.
I always say be kind to the people taking care of you because she advocated for me. She's like, I'm just gonna take this off your chart. She's like, now I'm putting it in your chart that you're allergic. By no means necessary should you take this medication.
Wow.
I can't even believe it wasn't in your chart. They should have taken that immediately.
I agree. And I certainly told them. That I was allergic. Certainly.
Yeah. I'm thankful for, I have a very elaborate, a very knowledgeable, sister network that I often lean into. Sure. And we share our experiences with our physicians, with our medical professionals, right? We share those experiences amongst ourselves. Yeah. It's no secret that most of the women in my sister network, we all have the same primary care doctor, right? Because we share our experiences. One of my sisters just had, breast reduction surgery. We have another one that's getting ready to go through that. She will be using the same doctor that she used. So we share that information as well with each other so that if it's a bad experience, we don't want to extend that experience or have one of our friends or our sisters going out and having to go through that bad experience. But if it's a good experience, we share that with one another, right? And we're able to share that amongst our community and, provide support for ourselves as well as to each other. So,
all that's key. And I try to tell people when you're going into the hospital, except in emergency situations, to always have an advocate with you, someone that can be there for you. Because like what you experienced, the anxiety, you can't always think of the questions. You can't always answer them. You don't always hear everything the same way. And it's always great to have that second person. And so my network knows always, whether it's your husband, a friend, a relative, someone to be there with you at all times.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you can't have someone there with you, all these phones that all this these new technology things we have, they record everything.
Yeah.
You can record it.
Yep.
I mean, you don't need the doctor's consent to record your medical, your medical
That's good information.
experience.
I will tell people.
Yeah, you can record it. I mean, because had I not recorded it, because this doctor literally wouldn't allow me to call my husband. And I was like, I don't understand, sir. You don't pay. I'm like arguing with this man. Like, you don't pay my phone bill.
Right.
Like,
The fact that first
so
of all.
So then I turned into the angry black woman at that point.
I asked you, could I call him?
Yeah.
Like that, you know, and then told you I was going to call him. Like,
yeah.
shouldn't even have to be going through all of that.
It was, yeah.
When it comes to your health, I think you should become the angry, any kind of woman. You have to be.
Yep, sometimes you have to.
Because you come this way one time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sorry, I didn't know it was going to happen. It's not going to solve anything.
Right.
And one thing about my husband, he'll go in and he'll tell everybody.
Right.
Like, this is what you can take, what you can't take. So make sure, even the advocate that you have with you, make sure that they are not afraid to speak up for your behalf, because sometimes we get nervous about that.
So I wanted to first thank you all for being in community with us today, being in this space, like sharing all of the wonderful nuggets, that you just shared with us and everyone else. And, we're bringing things to a close, unfortunately at this time. But one of the things that we're always in awe about, right, is your Black Girl Magic story. Like, what is, Dr. Roz and Juliette, what is your Black Girl Magic story for 2023? Is it, self-care, more love, right? More joy, a promotion on the rise, welcoming in new family members. Like, what is your Black Girl Magic story?
Mine is being me unapologetically.
Oh.
Yeah. Oftentimes I apologize for I have a bad habit of apologizing. People are like, stop apologizing, but I'm sorry, it's the Georgia girl in me, I can't help it. But just being me unapologetically. If I'm excited, I'm gonna be excited. If I'm sad, I'm gonna be sad. If I'm mad, I'm gonna be mad. If I'm happy, I'm gonna be happy. And it's crazy because I am a psychologist, but sometimes I have limited my emotions to make other people feel comfortable. And so I have decided in 2023, I am being me unapologetically.
I love it.
I love it. For me, it's entirely a little bit different.
Okay.
I'm going to start looking out for me. I've always heard the expression, love yourself as thy neighbor. And I've always loved my neighbor better than I loved myself. I didn't know that. And I just learned that last year, that I'm supposed to love myself, because I came from an entirely different generation, that you put everyone else first. And to put yourself first was very selfish.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try this year, 2023, to put myself first.
Yes, Miss Juliette.
I'm going to try it now. It's not going to be easy.
I love it.
It's not going to be easy, but that's what I'm going to try to do. If I want to sit in the bathtub, I'm going to try it, because I always take a shower because I'm in such a hurry.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do that. I'm going to light those candles I've had for 15 and 20 years just sitting there doing nothing. I'm going to do that for me.
Good.
Yeah.
So we'll say, looking out for me in 2023, right? Well, this has been a joy. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. I've so enjoyed this.
And so we will make this a theme going forward, looking out for me in 2023. We would like to thank all of you all for joining us today for these Black Girl Magic stories as we celebrate U.S. women pioneers. And we invite you to join us every Tuesday at 8 p.m. for Black Girl Magic Stories celebrating Women History Month. And also follow us on social. Remember to always live in your truth.
Almost give up, gotta crawl. Feels like too much. Pick back up again, back up again, back up again. Can't get scared to try. I get scared to fly. But the turbulence is better than getting left behind. I don't know what it looks like,